Hi, everyone. Welcome to Live Long and Pastor, where we explore new worlds of ministry, one pastor at a time. My name is Josh Ziefel. I'm the Dean of the College of Ministry here at Northwest University. And our goal in this podcast is to learn more about ministry from leading pastors like my guest today. Along the way, we hope you're going to be invigorated and challenged, and for those pastors listening in, encouraged towards longevity in ministry as you live Jesus' calling in your life. So, my guest today is my pastor, the one and only Dr. Brandon Beals.
Good to be here.
There he is. Brandon is the lead pastor of Venture Church in Mill Creek, Washington, and you've been lead pastor there for over 20 years now, right?
20 years and 4 months.
20 years and 4 months. We'll talk about that a little later. That is a long time. First question, though. You had to think about this before our podcast started. If you had to choose a fictional character to describe yourself as a pastor, who would it be and why?
And this is from TV,
movies, film, whatever, novels.
I would say I am, going back to the 80s.
Okay.
I am a merger of two characters from The Breakfast Club.
Okay.
Did you ever see The Breakfast Club?
I think so, yes.
It's like one of the greatest movies ever for a Gen Xer.
Well, for a Gen Xer, yeah.
So I am a mix of the Judd Nelson character and the Emilio Estevez character from The Breakfast Club.
Okay.
So
which one was like
the criminal?
Okay, yeah. I was going to say which one was the slacker. So yeah.
The slacker was Judd Nelson and the sporto was Emilio.
Yeah.
And if I had to say who I wanted to be, I'd say Rocky. Rocky Balboa.
Yeah. Rocky Balboa. I like that. Yeah. Okay, so we want to talk to you today about Venture, and I want to talk to you today about the ministry that you've been involved in your whole life, but particularly at Venture. One of our themes today is going to be longevity and kind of persistence in ministry, which is kind of one of our themes for the whole podcast. But I really want to think about it in your context, because I know you have some very interesting stories along the way where you have faced some challenges and have come out, at least so far, on the other side, successfully and with energy. So to start off, though, people listening might not know you very well. How did you end up being in ministry? What was your call to ministry like?
Sure. I didn't grow up in church.
Okay.
And a lot of people say, I got saved when I was in high school, but they pretty much were born underneath a pew and rebelled until they went to high school.
Yeah.
No church experience whatsoever.
Okay.
Like, I don't recall ever going to church as a kid. Not Christmas, not Easter, nothing. Met a girl. The girl was cute. And she said she wouldn't date me unless I went to her youth service. And I always joke that cute girls can get boys to do anything.
This is true. This is very true.
And so I eventually started going to her youth service. And after a few months, I was like, hey, girl, what's up? And she was, I won't date anybody unless they go to the Christian school that's attached to the church. And I went, I was all in at this point. And this girl was cute. So I went to my dad, who was a very successful businessman. And I, to this day, don't know why my dad said yes. But I asked my dad if I could go to the Christian school that was a part of this church in Seattle. And I think because it fit in my dad's resume. You know, you're a successful businessman, you know, you're driving a Cadillac, kid in prep school. It just kind of fits. And so my dad said yes. I was probably 15, 16. Never dated the girl. Always get asked, did you ever date the girl? Who was the girl?
I know. Was that girl die?
I get asked that all the time. It was not. Never dated the girl, but I really had an encounter with Jesus and got saved while I was there. And I was the really rough around the edges kid. I didn't know
How old were you at that point?
I would say probably 15, 16. I don't know the exact age. I remember I got baptized on Easter Sunday my sophomore year of high school. So that was when I got baptized. The church was a wild, crazy, charismatic church.
Okay.
Like, it was huge. And so, again, you have no church experience. You think everything is the same.
Yeah.
So there's probably 2,000 people there on a Sunday. Everybody's dancing during worship. Services are 2.5 hours long. I always tell everybody my greatest fear when I first started going to church is the little old ladies would get up in the middle of worship and they would start dancing and they would grab hands with people and they would spin around in circles. So my greatest fear at church was that the little old ladies would grab me and make me dance with them.
Okay. Did they ever?
No, they were in the front and I was in the back.
That's
And
about right,
if they made a beeline for me, I made a beeline to the bathroom. And I wasn't into that, but that was really all I knew. And I tell everybody that I when I was about probably 16, 17, I was in a service. There was a revival service. And I remember watching the speaker, and I remember who it was. His name's Herb Marks. The irony is he's a Foursquare pastor, and he lives in Mukilteo, which is where I live now. Yeah. I still have never formally met him and told him, you've made a massive impact in my life.
You need to.
He was up there preaching, and there's probably 500 people in the crowd, and I was sitting in the middle, and I just remember praying a prayer in my head. You know how you do that sometimes, talking to Jesus in my head? And I was like, Jesus, if I'm supposed to be doing what he's doing, have him stop and tell me.
Yeah.
And so I am not kidding. In a flow of consciousness of his speaking, he is preaching, walking back and forth. He stops in the middle of his sermon, describes what I'm wearing, and makes this statement, says, God's ordained you to preach the gospel.
Yeah.
And then he snaps back to his sermon and just keeps going. And I was like, this Jesus thing is really cool. And again, I hadn't grown up in church, so I didn't know I was supposed to doubt this stuff. I thought, like, you ask God and he answers. Yeah. And so that started my ministry journey, and graduated from high school, was going to go to University of Washington because that's what a son of a businessman does.
Yep.
And so what my parents wanted me to do. I'm a Husky through and through, bleed purple, and met with my youth pastor. He said, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I think I'm supposed to be a preacher.
Yeah.
And he said, you should go to Bible college.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is Bible college? And so he slid a brochure in front of me, and it was to Northwest University.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up here.
Okay. So you came as a freshman.
Came as a freshman.
Wow. Was Northwest, I mean, you'd been in church a few years at that point. Was Northwest a bit of a culture shock for you, or was it?
Totally.
Okay.
Remember, wild, crazy, charismatic church.
Okay.
So, and our church was loosely affiliated with the AG, but Northwest back in this is the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, was very traditional.
Okay.
Like, I think they had just recently allowed boys and girls to sit together in chapel. We used to have different sections. So it was really, really, really strict. My dad was very upset that I wanted to go to Bible college, so he refused to pay.
Okay.
So the only way that I could, and every student lived on campus back then, and I couldn't afford to live on campus, and I wasn't allowed to take loans. That was another rule my dad made. So I had to pay cash.
Wow.
I couldn't get loans.
Yeah.
I didn't have any scholarships because I didn't know I was going to go to Bible college until August. And so I had to work full time while I was in school.
Yeah.
And so I sat in the back of the class. I had a really great job. I was working as a loan officer for a bank.
Okay.
It's a long story that led to that, but I had a really unlikely, like, high school, college job as a loan officer. So I made lots of money, but I'm going to have to sneak out of class and do that. But I
give people mortgages.
I literally would get loan. I eventually, because I'd gotten transferred to the branch at Interlake in Bellevue in a safe way.
Okay. For
Security Pacific Banks, now Bank of America. And one of my jobs was to walk around the grocery store and try and convince people that are buying groceries to come to the bank and get loans. That's what I was doing when I was in college. It was just a total trip, but I paid really well. No, it was a culture shock. Yeah. I tell everybody, I found out who Abraham was in Bible Survey. I'd never heard the story of Abraham.
Okay, yeah.
I'd never heard the story of David and Goliath.
Wow.
I heard it in Bible Survey.
Yeah.
Afterwards, Dennis Leggett was my professor. I walked up to him and I said, hey, did you guys get that from the Rocky Balboa movies? Because it sounds so much like a Rocky story.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, this has been a story for 5,000 years. Like, okay, good to go. And Bible Survey, Bible 101, for a kid who's grown up in church, like the typical church kid that would go here, easiest class in the school.
Yeah.
Like, they learned all this stuff in Sunday school.
Yeah.
I never heard any of this. The hardest thing I had to do was memorize the books of the Bible in order and how to spell them. So I was very rough around the edges.
Okay, so I know you served in youth ministry for a number of years after that, but then about 21 years ago or so, you started to move towards planting what used to be called Canyon Creek Church, now Venture. I know it's a long story, but briefly, like, what's the venture story? Like, how did it come together? What led you from what you were doing to come here and plant the church?
So again, everything for me has always been God clearly told me to do something,
Yeah.
and I hadn't been saved long enough to doubt anything.
Yeah.
So God called me to be a senior pastor.
Yeah.
So I knew I was going to be a lead pastor, but I was rough around the edges, didn't know the Bible, was young, and you're supposed to be a youth pastor first. So right out of Bible college, get a job at BCA and the youth pastor, served there for 8 years, loved it, had a great experience. It's a different story, but I ended up transitioning. After being there for 8 years, I was also the senior associate. I was overseeing all the staff. The church was huge, but I had an opportunity to be the youth pastor for who was at that point my hero in ministry. His name is Glenn Berteau. He's the godfather of youth ministry in America. He's a legend for Gen X youth pastors. And he asked me to be his youth pastor. So my wife and I, at that time, we had a daughter, and she was pregnant with our twin boys. We basically sold everything, moved to Modesto, became the youth pastors there for 4 years. While I was there, I was finishing up my master's divinity, and I had written my thesis, which was totally theoretical, on how I would plant a church if I were to. I never planned on it because it was a terrible career move. To be honest with you, back then, most of my friends had tried to plant churches and it failed. Like the failure rate was like 8 out of 10.
Wow.
And the bitter rate of the failure people was 100%. Like they wanted nothing to do with Jesus, church people, ministry. And I just didn't want that to be me. And I didn't want to do that to my family. So I did it totally theoretically. But as happens in those or it was a thesis, in those thesis process, I felt very clearly the Lord said, would you give your 30s to church planning? I said, no. He said, but I want you to. And I said, Lord, I can't. This is a terrible career move. I have a family of 5. How am I going to provide for them? And the Lord said, your act of obedience is your willingness to plant. If you plant, I will meet all your needs. And I always joke when I tell the story that at that point, I was like, okay, so Lord, I'm going to do this. You're going to meet my need. Where do you want me to plant? And I heard again, your act of obedience is your willingness to plant. You decide, I'm going to bless it wherever you go. So if God told you you could plant anywhere and he's going to bless it, what would your list be? Just out of curiosity, where would you plant? If you could plant anywhere and you knew it was going to be blessed, where would you go?
I think I would go back to New Jersey and plant a church in Princeton, New Jersey.
Okay. For me, Santa Cruz. Santa Barbara, Pleasanton, San Jose, noticing a trend. Northern Cal beach towns, loved them all. Just totally me. Number 5 was Mill Creek, Washington. And Mill Creek was a church planning haven back then because it was Seattle, the least churched area in America, this booming tech place. And the I-5-405 corridor, which is where Mill Creek is, was a hotbed. Every major organization, denomination around America was sending church planners to Mill Creek. And Mill Creek just happened to be within 45 minutes of where my parents and my in-laws lived. So eventually, long story short, we decided to plant in Mill Creek. Planted venture.
Wow. And just a few months ago, celebrated 20th anniversary. So
never planned on being there that long.
So, okay, this is a question. I am curious about this. So, I attend there. My wife and I have been there 4 or 5 years or so. The church has been growing. We're just actually doing a building expansion. We just started. A lot of good things going on. There's multiple campuses. To me, it seems like the church is succeeding, is doing well. Is checking a lot of boxes of positive things that you'd like to see a church do. And I'm sure that you're excited to be able to see something you planted, be able to succeed like this. Obviously, and I asked this question not to take the Lord out of the equation because, we do our best and the Lord blesses. But in terms of things that Venture has done and been able to do, what are some of the things that you feel like Venture as a church has done that has helped contribute to its success over the last 20 years? Like, what's the secret? Like, what a lot of churches fail, the plants fail. Churches don't always grow as Venture has. Like, what are some of the secrets or some of the things that have taken place to help put it in that place to be successful?
You put it in perspective. The average church in America, depending on what list you're looking at, is 48 or 62. Depending on that. In our network, the Northwest Ministry Network, the vast of the 350 churches, most of them are under 100.
Mhm.
Like a really small percentage are above even 100,
Yeah.
yet alone in the thousands.
Mhm.
And just at Easter alone, we had 5,600 adults in the service. So it was great.
Yeah.
So I feel very blessed with what's going on. I think I would say probably two major factors have been key to venture. And I think the biggest one being is we have a motto, and we created these culture statements in the very beginning of the church that we have on our website. You can check them out. And one of them is everything's an experiment.
Yeah.
And another one is playing it safe is risky. And so we were willing, and I use sports metaphors. I'm a sporto. And I would tell the staff all the time, all right, it's bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, 2 outs, we're down by 3.
Yeah.
I'm going to swing. We're going to swing hard.
Yeah.
Now we might miss and lose this game,
Mm-hmm.
but we might win.
Yeah.
And so we've taken enormous risks. So in the first 15 years of the church, we moved 8 times.
Yeah.
8 times. Every time you move, you lose people.
Yeah, that does not seem like a recipe for success.
No, but what would happen is you would outgrow buildings and you'd have to move, and then you would go into when you buy buildings. And one of the challenges for church planners in Western Washington is you're chasing buildings. Yeah. Property is so expensive. Building from dirt is near impossible because of environmental issues and wetland setbacks, and it's super, super expensive. So most church planners just hope to land buildings, and most landlords aren't desperate for tenants in Western Washington. It's not like I travel around the country. Yeah. I go through cities and I'm like, there's empty buildings everywhere. That doesn't exist here. Yeah. There's no empty buildings in Kirkland. Yeah. There's no empty buildings in Mill Creek. Yeah. If there was an empty building, 10 people are lined up to rent that building. So you chase buildings. Yeah. And we were in the chasing buildings. And we would buy a building. It was too small for the moment. We would get there. Yeah. We built a building from dirt, which literally almost killed me. I mean, it was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life. I felt like I fought all of hell, plus all of the city government of Mill Creek. Build the building. COVID hits. Once COVID's over, we opened the building officially, and it was too small from the moment we opened it. Yeah. But it cost me $14 million to build it. Yeah. And those were really pivotal choices that moved the mission forward. But everything for my wife and I, and for our team, has always been, this is about Jesus, and we will do this till Jesus tells us to go. Like, I view it like, hey, I'm on his team. I work for him. Yeah. And I hold on to venture like this. Like literally at this moment, 5,000 people there on Easter, and I'm holding on to my church like this. If God said, lay it down, I would gladly lay down the stress, the pressure, everything, and go be a full-time professor at NU.
Oh, okay.
Live in poverty.
Well, you would. So.
Yes. I would gladly do that. And I think it's because we hold on to the church like this that allows the ebbs and flows of the good and the bad to not overwhelm us.
Yeah. So another question about venture. When you think about the last 20 years, and, in particularly, the last few years, maybe since you've been in the building, the vocation there, what are some of the things you're most proud of regarding venture and what it's been able to accomplish?
Honestly, the number one thing I'm most proud of is I just love the people in the church. Mm-hmm. I love that people like you and Rachel, that we have Josh and Rachel Ziefels of the world in the church. No, it's just, it's amazing to me that I do not fit the cookie cutter AG minister mold by any means. Like I am, like Don Ross lovingly refers to me as a maverick, and I just don't fit the typical mold, but that people of the caliber of you guys come to the church, find home next to, I love the diversity of our church. Church is incredibly diverse. Yeah. I love the fact that Kate and Keaton Branch come to the church. Okay. So Kate has a PhD from USC. Yeah. Keaton was a traveling rock star. I've never gone to church before. Incredibly successful. Yeah. They're beautiful. Wow. They stepped off of a magazine. Beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. They come to the church, find Jesus, turns their life upside down. They're at church next to people like you guys. That's my favorite. The
Yeah.
people at the church, like, it just blows
Yeah.
my mind. On Sunday, for
Mhm.
Mother's Day, I have a group of dudes that I randomly asked to do something to honor the moms for Mother's Day.
Okay.
So you'll see it when you're there. I want to describe the people. You've got an Alaska airline pilot that is going to be doing this. You've got a ER doctor that is going to be doing this. You've got high-tech executives that are about to do this insane thing that I'm asking them to do. And everything in between, you've got people with PhDs doing it, doctorates doing it, and everything in between.
Yeah.
And they're about to do what I'm going to ask them to do on Sunday.
Stay tuned,
And
folks.
it is ridiculous. And I look at that and I just think, only adventure.
Yeah.
This is like, these people are amazing. They're fun. They live on mission.
Yeah.
We took an offering to expand the building.
Mm-hmm.
And I told everybody, we're taking an offering on this date. I'd like to raise 1.5, but in my head, I'm thinking, if we raise 600,000, it'll be a miracle. It was $1.2 million.
Wow.
These people. On the heels of that, I'm out of town. We take an offering for one day to feed the world.
Yeah.
All going to Convoy of Hope. $50,000 comes in.
Yeah.
Now, the people are what it is, and the stories. Like, I am addicted to the stories of life change.
Yeah.
Just like, again, I talked about Keaton Caton, and I talk about Kai Van Leuven, who was a great-great-grandson of Joseph Smith, was a Mormon theology teacher, comes, radically gets saved, turns his life upside down. Now he does a podcast, Jesus for Mormons.
Yeah.
And those are my stories that I get to tell. I'm addicted to that. I love ministering in Seattle because people don't go to church here.
Yeah.
And they don't have any church experience. And they come with zero expectation. God turns their life upside down. I teach through the book of Genesis, stories that you know backwards and forwards. But I get to teach it. Yeah. And they're like, that's the most amazing story I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Like Noah's Ark? I've never heard that. The Tower of Babel? I've never heard that. Joseph in prison? I've never, and they never hear.
So they're like you in your Bible survey, back
Yes. Well, it is my favorite thing watching the light bulb come on with these people because the people in this region, they're the leaders in business.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Across the United States. They're the leaders in technology. Yeah. And they find Jesus here. And that's what I love about the church.
So flipping the question around a little bit, when you think about the community, Mill Creek, when you think about the community that you're in, how do you think people in your community would describe Venture?
I think it would be 50-50. Okay. And it would be our church being as large as it is now. We cause lots of traffic.
Well, yeah. I'm sure they think that, yeah.
We do cause problems for the city. We are conservative theologically, and we're socially conservative in an area that isn't.
That's true, yeah.
And so I don't have a rainbow flag on the church. We wouldn't be an affirming church, and that causes a lot of conflict with the community. But we just want to stay true and righteous to God's word. Yeah. We do love people. We serve the community. Yeah. I want the community to know anything you ask, we will do. Yeah. Like you ask us to help, answer's yes. You need money? Yes. Yeah. Whatever we can do within reason. If it's, can you close down your building and shrink your church? The answer is no. Yeah. But anything, like the city council wanted me to stand up. I'm really being open on this. They wanted me to stand up because we hosted every single major kids event for the city. Okay. We did them all. Yeah. We did trunk or treat. We did the Easter egg hunt. We did the Christmas tree lighting. We did it all for the city. And the city started getting pushback because they found out our church didn't endorse gay marriage. Yeah. And we're not offensive. We're inclusive of everybody. I want everybody to come and find Jesus. Yeah. Now, we're all sinners saved by grace. Yeah. So I don't, that's kind of our stance.
Venture Church is not a burn it all down, let's create enemies type of church.
No, that's not at all. And so the mayor of the city goes to my church, got saved at our church. Okay. And he's like, Brandon, I didn't know like we were this staunch about stuff like this. And I said, everybody's welcome. Anybody can come to church.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that I agree with everything that everybody does, and it doesn't mean that I'm not believing that you're going to work out your salvation through fear and trembling. And so he asked if I would stand up in front of the city council and endorse gay marriage. Literally, that was 3 years ago. Okay. I said, well, I can't do that because I theologically don't agree with it. I do think it's wrong. And me not doing that has caused a little bit of tension with the community. But it's the benefit of when you're the big church in the community. When you're a church of 3,000 in a community of 20,000, we have a fair amount of influence.
Yeah, and I take your meaning. You're not looking to. You realize there will be some hostility because of certain convictions that you have.
There's nothing I can do.
But you're also not trying to create new opportunities to create tension. You're trying to serve where you can.
I'm not looking to get in fights with people. I'm not one of those pastors that wants to pick a fight with everybody. I struggle with anxiety. I want people to be my friend. I want people to. I like it when people like me. But I realize that Jesus warned me that all men will hate you because of me. And, being a Christian in Seattle, it's a blast because we get to see radical salvations, and it's a challenge because there's not a lot of us.
One last question on the church. Obviously, we're just starting this building expansion. It actually surprised me. I was walking. There's a little pathway from the other parking lot to the church, and there was a fence, and I had to climb around it the other day.
Yeah, well, but you not believe how complicated it is to get to my office because that fence makes it so I can't get in my office.
So, but obviously, other than the building expansion, what's on the horizon for Venture right now that you're excited about? What are you looking forward to?
I would say, obviously, expanding the facility. 2 years ago, the staff met, and we said, we did kind of a strat ops session, and we were open and honest, and we do this, and we determined that our 2 areas of opportunity were we have parking issues, which we still have got to figure that out. It's just a constant struggle. But we had so many space issues and kids. And then we felt like the other challenge was our kids ministry was not at the level that we needed it to be, not because of the leader, it was because of the facility. Like we had to improve that. So we feel like with the expansion of our building, which is primarily the kids facility, that we're solving that issue. We're adding 250 seats to the auditorium, which is going to be great. Adult classrooms for people like you that teach adult classes. We'll have space. And we had a transition in our kids ministry, and we decided if we're going to have a transition, we want to get a seasoned, the best of the best. And I can't announce who it is because it's not official in front of his church, but I believe we hired the best kids pastor out of the Southern California network. Like the best. And that person is going to take our kids ministry to the next level. And it coincides with this facility. So I'm really excited about that. I'm excited. This morning we had our all campus meeting. So all of our staff from all of our campuses was in the meeting. It's over 50 people across all of our campuses. And the thing I love about multi-site is even when one of us is struggling, someone's winning. And collaboratively, we're always winning. If one is struggling, 5 of our campuses are doing great. If 2 are struggling, 4 are doing great. And overall, the mission is moving forward. And that is the thing that I love about multi-site. When we do this thing together, we're able to, when someone's struggling, we're able to pick that person up and lift that person. And in the end, you can step back, look around and say, hey, my little piece of this, it's got a challenge right now. Staff challenge, whatever. People challenge. But overall, organizationally, we're winning. So I'm excited to see our campuses continue to grow. Coolest thing is post-Easter, every single Venture campus is experiencing record attendance. Post-Easter. They are larger than they've ever been. Even campuses that we were concerned with, like our Spokane campus, has been a slow growth from the entire time. They had over 100 on Easter, which is amazing, and post-Easter have been in the 70s. You can do something with 70 people. You've got critical mass. we look at everything and I'm just really excited. And then Christian Lindbeck oversees all of our campuses and things, and we're beginning to brainstorm what's next.
Yeah.
We need to get the new building opened, the expansion open.
And when do you hope that be done?
This fall.
Okay. Nice.
Thanksgiving is supposed to be the deadline. Mm-hmm. We need to open it, and then I'd like to see the central campus grow by, our goal is 300 to 500 people in 2026. Then by the end of 2026, assuming all this happens, could afford our new payment, everything, then we'll open our next campus. Yeah. And we're looking at the Linwood, Edmonds, Mukilteo area as our next campus. Okay. So if you're out there, do you want to be a campus pastor? Talk to me. Let's talk. I'd love to get you on our team. We are also considering more campuses in other states. Okay. So we're talking to a leader right now about planting a campus in Denver.
Wow. Okay.
So we'll see. So I think that's kind of what's next, campus expansions.
Cool.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about longevity in ministry. So not only have you been a minister for,
30 years.
30 years.
32 years.
Yeah. You've been venture for 20 plus years.
In our network, I am the OG now. Can you believe that? I was doing lunch with Troy Jones the other day, and he looked at me and he goes, "Brandon, we need each other." And I was like, "Why?" And he goes, "Because you and I, we're the last ones standing." And the thing is, I still feel like I'm a baby.
Yeah. Yeah. So how have you hung in there for 20 years? Like, what's helped you stay for 20 years?
Yeah, I think I would start this by answering, why do people switch all the time?
Yeah.
I was thinking, a friend of mine just hired a new associate, and that associate that he hired, this is his 4th job in 2 years. So he has averaged 6 months at a church. And so you can assume if he is now his 4th church, that there's going to be a 5th in probably a year or two. Yeah. So first off, as human beings, we develop habits. Yeah. And if you have a habit, when it gets complicated, you quit and move on to the next thing. That doesn't change overnight. Yeah. So I think part of it is ministry is hard. Like this is planting a church. There is the hardest thing you will ever do your entire life. Yeah. Working with people is difficult. Being a pastor in the Seattle area comes with challenges that no one else in the nation in our profession gets. Yeah. From the cost of living here to the animosity to the gospel. Yeah. It's a challenging thing. And I think what happens is when it gets hard, people, they shift into fight or flight. Yeah. And unfortunately, we've created entire generations that jump into flight mode, not fight. Yeah. We haven't taught people to fight. So I think that's one reason. I also think people get addicted to the first 2 or 3 years of a job. Yeah. And those are the easiest parts. Yeah. It gets hard after year 3, 4, because everything's your fault after year 3 and 4. Yeah. It's the other guy's fault the first 2 years. And I think a lot of times we've just created a culture where there's a habit where people switch churches. I'm a firm believer in this, that pastors that continually switch jobs hurts the sheep. Okay. The sheep are what Jesus cares about. He has entrusted the sheep to our care. Yeah. Like, this is not like a ministry thing. It is not about us. Yeah. It's about the sheep. And if we are constantly doing things that wound the sheep, how is that God's will? Yeah. So I'm deeply bothered by my friends in ministry that constantly blame Jesus for their constant shifting of jobs, when logically it makes no sense that we are supposed to, the shepherd lays down his life for the sheep, which means, what does that mean for you and I? We lay down our ambitions. Yeah. We lay down our goals. We lay down our finances. We lay down our PTO time. We lay down our life for the sheep, which means sometimes when ministry gets really, really, really hard, instead of flight, which, by the way, I want to do that too. You know how many times in 20 years I just wanted to say, you people are mean. I know you're sheep, but you are mean sheep.
Yeah.
And you bite. And I want nice, docile sheep.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go jump over to that place over there. Oh, in the last 20 years, I don't know, 10 times I wanted to do that.
If you're able to, are there one or two example of times when you felt like you thought it might be the end, and then what kept you?
I was,
because even 20 years. I mean, 20 years allows you to have a nice 2 or 3 7-year tenures, which is pretty good. So
I could have left after 10 years and felt like I gave it good tenure. No, absolutely. It's crazy to think that I will probably start and pastor the church for the rest of my life that I started at. Yeah. It's I feel very blessed. Yeah. That I planted in an area that gives me the opportunity to see my church grow to that point where I can continue. No, there was one time I was offered a mega church. I was offered a job in a mega church, non-denominational in Arizona, church of 10,000. Yeah. I'd gone through the whole process. They were flying me into candidate. Yeah. I was going to take this job. I was moving to Arizona. Yeah. Di and I had looked for houses. Wow. Everything. We were ready to move. And we were driving to the airport. We were living in Mill Creek at the time, so it was probably 8 years ago. So I'd been at Venture for 12 years. Yeah. We were driving to the airport, and the head of the pulpit committee called me and said, "Hey, just last second, we looked at your church website, and we noticed that your wife is listed as a pastor on staff." Remember, this is a non-denominational church. They've interviewed me. They've interviewed Di, and they said, "We don't have women pastors here. Are you okay with that?" And I never even went to the airport. I turned around and drove home. So I was like, my wife's anointing and calling is equal to mine and just as important as mine. And while we understand, then in all likelihood, my job decides where we move and live. Yeah. There has to be an opportunity for her ministry to thrive also. Yeah. And that was one of the things. I came back and met with my board, and my board was thrilled. I was leaving. Yeah. And Di and I afterwards were like, all of our dreams can come true here. Our dreams can come true for her, me, and our kids. Yeah. So that was one. Another big one was building the building. It almost killed me. And I'm not.
I mean, I've heard that after building projects will cause pastors to leave. Like
80% of ministers leave after their building project because we're just not taught to do stuff like this. They don't teach us in Bible college
how to do that. Yeah.
And it is so hard. And that building project, building that Mill Creek building from dirt, in the middle of it, I've told the story 100 times, so I won't burden this group with it. You can go online and listen to other podcasts where I've done it, but I had an anxiety attack that put me in the hospital. Yeah. I had reoccurring, it was paralyzing anxiety, and it was all from stress. Yeah. And I just broke. And you know me really well. I mean, I'm not just your pastor, we're buddies. Yeah. So Brandon, fearless, tenacious, go-getter, courageous. I was a shell of myself. Like anytime anybody texted me, I had an anxiety meltdown. They hate me. They're going to tell me they're leaving the church and things like that. And I did not think I could lead a large church anymore. Yeah. I thought something had fundamentally broken me, and I could not lead something with this much pressure, this size. All I wanted was a church of 200. Yeah. And unfortunately, I had led the church into this building program, and I would be a horrible leader to bail in the middle of it. Yeah. So I had to see the thing through, and then we finally opened the building, and I'm thinking, good, I did it. Now I'm going to go take the church of 200. Then COVID hit. Yeah. I was like, I can't bail on them during COVID. And then one day I woke up and I was like, I feel better now. I feel myself again. Wow. So that was really, really, really complicated. I think most of the moments to leave, you power through them on your own through prayer and your wife, but it's usually a good opportunity that is presented to you. Mm-hmm. And part of our spiritual journey is to remember that Jesus loves us, and he wants to bless you and Rachel, wants to bless me and Di, and that means bless our ministries. Yeah. So we don't navigate through good and bad decisions. If you think of opportunities you've had, it's one good opportunities stacked on top of 5 other good opportunities.
Yeah.
And our Christian journey with Jesus is, how do we navigate the best through all of these good opportunities? And I think every time I got distracted, it was with a good opportunity. And I always came back to, venture's the best opportunity. Maybe not for everybody, but it's the best opportunity for a husband and wife who are both type A leaders, both feel very called, strong call to vocational ministry. And the thing that I always say about my wife is not your typical, like, pastor's wife who got called into ministry later on. I mean, she is, by all definition, my absolute equal in this thing. I mean, she is equally as dynamic, equally as sharp as me.
Forgive the analogy. Sometimes I've said, if Brandon got hit by a bus tomorrow,
I could leave the
Di
church.
would just pick up the church and lead it.
Possibly better.
I'm not going to comment on that.
No, I mean, that's really it.
Yeah.
And so I need a ministry environment where my wife can thrive at a level of leadership where in the church world, it's mostly men.
That's true.
But she can thrive also. And it just happens to be this church we started.
Yeah. So if pastors are listening, or if a pastor says, I mean, they may go through very different situations than you did, but if there's a pastor listening who's considering moving on from their church or throwing in the towel about ministry, like what would be some things you would encourage them to pray through, think through, talk through as they're in that space?
Okay. One of the teachings that I heard from Glenn Berteau, and I know that this is like hyper charismatic theory and a little bit of stretch theologically, but the principle is true.
Yeah.
And he talks about God anoints you for ministry, and ministry is usually to an assignment.
Yeah.
So he anoints you to ministry and to an assignment. And he said, too many people don't realize that he's anointed them for ministry, for an assignment at a place.
Yeah.
And they leave that place too soon.
Okay.
And when they leave that place, their anointing for ministry was at that assignment. And then they leave and try ministry on their own strength, not realizing that I was anointed for that place.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of his theory. And so he taught me, he said, it's better to stay longer and be sure than to leave too soon and leave without your anointing.
Yeah.
Because God anoints you for, an opportunity and a place. So that's the first thing I would say. I think fruit in ministry is bearing your heart somewhere.
Okay.
And seeing the things through, I want to see little Josh and Rachel Ziefels running around in the nursery and kids ministry, eventually be in our preschool, eventually be Northwest University students. And then I get to hire them someday. Well, wait a second.
How
Maybe
old
they'll
are you
take
gonna
over.
be,
I know. I'm gonna be 90. No, I mean that's like real ministry. Is through longevity.
Yeah.
That I always encourage pastors. I know it's super hard right now.
Yeah.
What you're dealing with, it seems impossible. It seems unrecoverable. We are, as men and women of God, we develop habits on the mountain.
Yeah.
And we have those mountaintop experiences that bring us through the valley, because the valley's coming.
Yeah.
It's going to be good times. It's going to be tough times. And you develop good habits on the mountain that'll bring you through the valley. But on the other side of the challenge, and I've seen this in 20 years, 50 times, Josh, the blessing's coming on the other side.
Yeah.
Every time I navigate through it, I want to quit. And I always do want to quit every single time. But I push through, usually because my wife won't let me quit. And I get to the other side, and there's just blessing waiting on the other side. There's fruitfulness on the other side.
Yeah.
Faithfulness leads to fruitfulness.
Yeah.
And we've got to push through. I think we need to change the trend that the average youth pastor stays in a church for 1.5 years, average kids pastor 2.5 years, average associate 2.5 years, average senior pastor 5.5 years. That has to change.
Yeah.
We want to bring revival to America. We need pastors that are tough, that have some tenacity, stick-to-itiveness, courage, straight. They need a little bit of like the UFC fighter in them. That's going to they need some stinking grit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, our time is about up. I have one final question. Before that, any other final thoughts connected to what we've discussed here today? that comes to mind that you thought I was going to ask you that I didn't, or you'd like to say?
No, if you're out there and you're listening, maybe you heard I was doing this and you thought I want to hear about church planning. If you're considering church planning, I'd love to meet with you. Love to chat with you. Love to give you any advice. And it was a couple of weeks ago, the Lord woke me up in the middle of the night, told me to tell anybody that's considering church planning, it's time to say yes. I felt like God spoke that to me as clear as day. So if you're out there, you want a church plant, say yes.
Yeah. Okay, final question, Brandon. And you've said a few of these things, and it doesn't have to be connected to what we said so far, but if you had a room full of 10,000 pastors, a stadium full of 10,000 pastors, and you had 30 seconds to say something to them, 30 seconds to a minute to say something to them, what would it be? Jesus
is supposed to be the hero. This is not about us. This is not about our social media followings, book sales, conferences, all of those things. Like if we become more known at our churches than the Jesus that we are simply the spokesman for, we have failed. Yeah. And I think what really caused the exodus of church 10 years ago was too many ministers became Christian celebrities and became the heroes. And I think the greatest thing that's happened in church across America over the last 5 years is Jesus is the hero again. Yeah. He is the beginning. He is the end. Yeah. We are a blip on a radar. We don't matter. Yeah. He is the one that matters. And we exist to make Jesus famous. Yeah.
Which is right on the wall in venture.
It is.
Well, although social media isn't important, if people have heard you today and they're like, I'd like to hear more of that guy, where can we find you online?
At Fight Pastor, FIGHT Pastor. Long story, another day.
Another day. And that's you on Instagram, but that's your handle on a lot of things, probably, right?
Twitter, Instagram. Okay. If you're easily offended, don't follow me on Twitter. Instagram is kind of more my public-facing social media.
And you and one of our other pastors have a podcast called Pastors Unfiltered, right?
Yes, Pastors Unfiltered. It's a one-take wonder. We're open and honest. We talk about the things that pastors think but don't talk about, and encourage you to check it out. Cool. Pastors Unfiltered.
All right. Well, thank you for being with me today.
Hey, this has been fun.
Cool. Thanks.